I am Lawrence Williams. I'm a former teacher in secondary education. My philosophy of education is on constructionism. You have to make the lessons interesting so the children are engaged in what they're doing. You are the future.
皆様ごきげんよう、高松菜奈です。私は今ロンドンにいます。本日は元小学校校長のローレンス・ウィリアムさんに取材します。ローレンス・ウィリアムさんは日本の学習指導要領の策定にも関わられたそうです。イギリスのシティズンシップ教育の考えを平成14年から実施されました総合的な学習の時間の中に導入しました。各教科を通してシティズンシップ教育を行うことを提言し、結果日本では生きる力として反映されました。当時の大学教授などの有識者がウィリアムさんの授業をイギリスのシティズンシップ教育の最先端として取材したそうです。日本とイギリスのシティズンシップ教育の違いについてお伺いします。
I am Lawrence Williams. I'm a former teacher in secondary education. I've been a head teacher. When I retired from teaching in schools, I moved to teach teachers at Brunel University in London, and there I taught literacy and ICT, and then when the new computer science came in, the university asked me would I write a course on computer programming. I took a deep breath and said, okay, I will do a course on computer programming, and I taught Scratch, which is a basic, simple computer program, and then now I'm teaching Python, which is much harder for everybody. So that is my history. In the UK, it is generally the case that there are four main strands. The first one is democracy, and the idea is that the children in school learn about local democracy, how to vote for local people. Then they also learn about government, how the government is run through our Houses of Parliament, and they learn about those systems and processes so they understand how they are being governed. The second area is politics, which is how the parties form, Labour, Liberal, Conservative, and now a Green Party, which I'm pleased to see. And those are then explained to the students so they know what the different parties stand for, so they have an understanding of their voting rights. The next one is about the economy. We think it's important that children understand how the economy works. For example, at the moment, the cost of gas and petroleum are going very high, and houses are having to pay more and more money for heating and lighting. Also, food is going up in cost, so that is explained to the students as part of their citizenship lessons. How does this work? What can we do about it? So they are better informed about the problem which many families are facing. And finally, law. What are the rights and responsibilities of different people in society, because people need to know how to behave and what the law says. So that again is the fourth main strand. Sometimes this process is linked with what we call PSHE, which is personal, social and health, because that broadens the activities, but only some schools will link it together, some schools will teach it as two separate strands of their education. There are two aspects to that. The first one is that I developed in my school, my secondary school, a process of bringing the secondary curriculum together through using ICT. So we started to develop links between different subjects. We started with English and dance, then we added drama, then we added all the other subjects together, which culminated in a project called The Light Project, which had light as a topic, and every teacher in the school contributed some aspect of light to the project. History of light, technology, electricity, photosynthesis and so on. So the students had a holistic view of light and was put into several textbooks for Japanese teachers to learn. The second strand was drama. We did a very exciting project on drama, and in London we performed a play. It was beamed to Japan. In Japan, scene 2 of the play was performed, and that was seen in London, and that was very successful, and that was recorded, has gone into Ikeda Junior High School as a pilot for introducing drama into your national curriculum. I haven't had a recent report on that, but usually pilot projects are adopted by the ministry. The way of teaching, there are 2 ways of teaching this. One is as a subject called citizenship on the curriculum, and some schools do that. But my method is slightly different, like with the LIGHT project, where you look at the subject from many different directions. What we would do today is we would look at English language, in your case Japanese language, and we would bring newspaper articles and magazine articles into the classroom about controversial subjects, and we would analyse the language of those newspaper articles. We would discuss them. We would then formulate a response, a poem or story or drama, to write our own responses to the activities that we saw in the newspapers. So that's the first one in English or Japanese. The second one is through debating. So you have a controversial issue, and you would have 2 students. One would take one perspective, the other would take a different perspective, and they would argue this in front of the class. Sometimes 4 students against 4 students, so that we have debating, which is good for citizenship also, because that is what happens in local government and in the Houses of Parliament. So it's a model for citizenship, as well as a way of exploring the subject of citizenship. So that is how we would do that. There is no difference between failures in citizenship and failures in any other subject. If lessons are poorly planned, if they are poorly taught, then that's a failure. But that's not just citizenship, that's true for all subjects. If you have a bad teacher, you have bad outcomes, bad results. The trick is to have good teachers. The same as with every subject, you have to make the lessons interesting so the children are engaged in what they're doing, and that's why I suggest that the cross-curricular approach is probably stronger, because if you have one teacher only teaching citizenship, it can be quite dull and uninteresting, whereas if you spread it across the curriculum, then the children are engaged in music and in drama and in history, and so it is more interesting for them. I would argue my philosophy of education is on constructionism. Now, constructionism is that students learn best when they are making something. It doesn't matter what that is, whether it's a painting or a song or a poem, or scientific exploration. If they are making something, they're engaged more fully in it. And that's why if you take the cross-curricular elements that I've suggested, they are making art, they are making songs about citizenship, they are looking at the history and so on. And that will engage them more than if they are looking at the blackboard, the teacher writes on the blackboard, they copy down, they write. This is terrible. Terrible way of teaching, whereas constructionism, where they are learning by doing, learning by making, then that is a much more successful way of teaching, and children are naturally more engaged in it. And if you then celebrate the work they've done, so that in the school there are pictures all around of citizenship. Here's the songs that we wrote in the school corridors, so that everybody can see, oh, that's an interesting song that you've written there, an interesting piece of music, an interesting piece of historical research. You display this everywhere, and that is what we would then analyse in the university, and collate into first prize, second prize, third prize, best prize for art, best prize for music, best performance of a song. It doesn't have to be writing the music, just a rock group of citizenship, and film the performances. And all of those would be part of your assessment of what the students and the teacher have achieved in the classroom. And if you then put that onto a website, newspaper articles, magazine articles, then you become more visible to the people in Japan. Two things. One is that the children understand how their society works. That's important. But the second thing is, if they are voting and they know what to vote for and how to vote, then they can change what is happening in society. So citizenship gives them first of all information, but also an understanding of the mechanisms of society. How do you make change in society? And if they know how to do that, then they can become controllers of their own future. And I think that's very, very important. There is a philosophical problem here though, because you are in a school and you are trying to teach them about democracy and voting and the power to change things in an institution which is about the most undemocratic institution on the planet. The only way forward is for citizenship teaching and school councils. I think those are the only two ways around that. Schools are not democratic, and it is ironic that we have to teach democracy in a place which is more like a prison. It is a group of perhaps 6, 8 students who you, as a pupil, say, I will vote for you, so it's voting, good. They then will be a representative, and then they will discuss items in their school's council, and they will take those ideas to the management of the school and say, can we change this? And the teachers will say, why? And the council will say, well, because of this and this. Some things can be changed quickly and easily. Some things will never be changed, but that doesn't stop him listening to what the students are concerned about. In the UK, certainly in England, we have a group called Ofsted. Ofsted is the Office for Standards in Education. They're a body that have the authority to look into every school, and they go into the school with 4, 5, 6 inspectors, and they look at every aspect of the school, the spending of the money, the planning of the lessons, homework, relationships with parents and so on, everything. They go in and see lessons. They say this maths department is better than this science department, and they write a detailed report. That detailed report is then sent to the head teacher and is published on the web so everybody can see. If you want to know what the school there is like and you are thinking of sending your children there, you look at the Ofsted report. And the Ofsted report will say, this is wonderful, this is wonderful, this is okay, this needs to be changed. And so that report goes to the school, and then the school has a framework to build on and to see what they must do next. It's a plan for the future. So the teachers then work with the head teacher, say, this is bad, we must fix it, this is bad, we must fix it. And then the next time Ofsted come in to see, they say, have you done this and this and this? Yes, we have. So it's a way of lifting the standards in the schools. And if a department is doing particularly badly, then the head teacher has an obligation to provide support to a bad teacher. If there is a bad teacher, they will say, why is this teacher bad? They do not have enough knowledge. So the head teacher would ensure that that teacher is given extra support in how to understand their subject, how to have different ways of teaching the same subject. And so the head teacher is responsible for making sure any bad teaching is made better. That's his job. If it's very bad and the teacher is, say, beyond redeeming, then the matter would go to the teachers' union, and it might end up with a teacher being dismissed from the school. Not very frequently, but there is a mechanism to dismiss a teacher who is very, very bad and cannot, and has been given support, but still isn't a good teacher. So that is the process. I think it's a very strong one. Quite simply by showing people what can be done. We call it dissemination. The dissemination of good practice, which I can come back to, festivals, conferences, competitions, so that people see good practice, think, that's a good idea, that's a good idea, we must copy that. So that people cannot follow if there's no one out in the front leading. So you have to create an environment of publicity and information dissemination through NHK, through newspapers, magazines, email. I think nowadays children of this generation are much more fortunate than previous generations because they have email, they have Facebook, they have got Twitter, WhatsApp. They can very easily form groups to make pressure on society. They have better mechanisms to do that than certainly when I was at school. Just, you are the future. You are going to build a future. So that future must be what you want. And if you know how, through citizenship, if you know how to make those changes, then you can bring about a much better future for you and your families and the whole of society. So you are the people who must do it. Never pass it on to someone else. It is your future, you must work for it. And through learning how to vote, how to plan, how to deal with the law, how to deal with democratic issues, you are better equipped to make those changes. Well, as I've said, you are the people that must do this, and you have the tools. You have the tools to do this through all the social media. There's no excuse not to. For my generation, very hard work. You would have to walk to speak to someone. You would have to telephone. Now you have social groups where you can very quickly organise things. For example, crowdfunding. Do you know crowdfunding? Right, crowdfunding. We want to make this garden in the school better. Crowdfunding. Find the money, make a beautiful garden. Right? Those tools exist now, which didn't exist before. So children have no excuse not to build a better world.
Thank you very much.
That's it. Okay.
最後までご覧いただきありがとうございました。ぜひチャンネル登録、高評価お願いいたします。それではまたごきげんよう。
No, this is good. This is a. So this is good that the lights are going off because we are saving energy. It's good.